his cousin actually ended up, he tried to make a run at the PGA Tour. He didn't quite make it. He did play in the Travelers.
Oh, no way.
Monday morning qualified for it.
Yeah.
And he did the New York Open at Bethpage Black, and he asked his cousin, because they're cousins, and he was a great golfer, to play. And they needed another person, so I got invited. And at that point, I'm like a 14, 15 handicap.
Yeah.
And we played whatever tees they were playing for the New York Open.
Oh, my God.
And I was struggling.
Oh, I can imagine,
it was
dude.
Hard. Yeah, it was hard.
What are you now?
I think my index is like 8 point something.
Oh, okay.
I've been lower, but yeah.
It's pretty good.
This year I want to make a comeback.
Make a run?
Yeah.
My dad's gotten down to like 6.8, and now I think he's like a 12.
Yeah.
Like I think he was sandbagging for a tournament.
Yeah. Well,
that's another story. No.
My dad was good. He was a 2 at one point.
No way.
Yeah.
How much golf did he play? How many days a week during the summer?
I don't know, but he probably got 50, 60 rounds a year.
Okay.
But there was a period. It's funny when he was a broker at Showcase and he had a partner. There was a point in time where they had a third partner, which we don't really talk about much. But way in the beginning, he had a third partner, and my dad didn't like her, so he was avoiding going in the office. I think he got like 150 rounds.
That is so funny.
That's when he got good.
To remain nameless. I am so excited today. Today I have John Donato from Watertown? Middlebury now.
Live in Middlebury.
From Waterbury.
Yeah, from Waterbury.
On the podcast, John owns Showcase Realty. John is one of the guys I love hanging out with in the business. We were catching up earlier before this. Golf, Ron Paul, a bunch of other things. It was fantastic. Super excited to have you on.
Cool.
That's all you got?
Appreciate it. I appreciate that. Excited to be in here with the young guys and see what you got going on.
I love it. Hey, well, that's the end of the podcast. Thanks for coming.
See ya.
So we're going to talk today a little bit about your background,
Sure.
where you came from, growing up, family, walk through kind of like life. You know, the BC stuff was so interesting. I didn't even know you went there. And that was like a time of change for you, I think, from our conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we'll get into real estate, of course. Everybody probably wants to hear about the brokerage, your personal production, being a huge producer, changing into management.
Sure.
And still kicking a couple deals here and there, helping.
So you want the full story, beginning to end.
You got it. So you grew up in Waterbury, right?
Yep.
Public schools?
I did. So I grew up in Waterbury. I did K through 6 in Waterbury Public Schools. My father had a real estate business.
Yeah.
He actually opened the place. It was called New Concept Realty before Showcase.
Yeah.
So when I was growing up at that age, it was New Concept. And just your typical city kid growing up, right? I did really well in school. I had normal friends, like out riding your bike in the neighborhood until 5:30 and then come home type of thing.
Yeah.
It was great. A lot of friends. And then in 7th grade, we moved to Watertown, and I did 2 years in public school there. And it was tough, you know. You leaving your friends, you're reestablishing, you're meeting new people. But that was cool. I met a whole new group of people. I'm in a different place, and I ended up. I'll tell you though. You want to hear the whole story? How I ended up at Taft, or
where in Waterbury did you grow up? What part of Waterbury?
East end of Waterbury. So I went to Rotella, but it was different back then. It was literally like a portable trailer, literally.
No way.
Yeah, it was not the beautiful school. They built that after.
Oh, they did?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Portable trailer sounds like Waterbury, but okay, we gotta get here. So, wait, Taft, yeah. Let's hear the story.
Sure. So
it's a big prep school.
It is. Basically, my parents put a lot of value on education, even from when I was little, and they wanted me to go to Holy Cross in Waterbury, and I did not want to go to Holy Cross. I wanted to go to Watertown High with my friends, right?
Yeah.
Like I didn't want to make another transition. I spent 2 years building relationships, meeting people, wanted to go to Watertown, be with those same kids, keep the friendships. So my father, being the negotiator and deal maker that he is, he actually cut me a deal, and he said, I'll make a deal with you. If you apply to Taft, you can choose where you go. If you don't apply, you're going to Holy Cross. Like, there's no discussion. You're 14 years old, you're going where we tell you, right? Fair enough. So I applied to Taft, and I gave it a real try, right? Did my essay, did my interview, and I had really good grades, and I got accepted. And nothing like the guilt of an Italian grandmother. My father's mother called me, and she said to me, and I'm 14 years old, she said, John, whatever you decide, it's a real feather in your cap that you got into Taft. And I kind of knew it was a bigger deal than just, hey, where are my friends going to school? But I'm 14 years old, right?
Yeah.
So reflecting on what my grandmother said and how the family was proud, I did end up deciding to go to Taft. And it was a big, big change. I mean, I went from the kid who would finish his homework on the bus or in homeroom and get literally straight A's to freshman year, doing a heavy workload and getting lower grades. So it was tough. But by the end of the 4 years, I actually graduated. It's called cum laude, but it's like the top 10% of the class.
Yeah.
So I academically thrived there. And it was a lot of work. It was 6 days a week of school.
No way. Saturdays too?
Saturday school. Prep school's a little different. They do a half day Wednesday, a half day Saturday, and they do that to accommodate the travel for sports. But it's a lot of sacrifice, right? It was hard.
Did you live there, or you commuted? Okay.
So that's another thing. When you're a day student,
Yeah.
you're kind of a second-rate citizen at the schools. You don't get treated with the full respect of a boarder. So it was tough. And I had friendships at Taft, but I had friendships with my local friends as well. So there was a lot of sacrifice. But on another note, even though it was hard and not being fully committed there and being fully part of the boarding and socially 100% in, it taught me like academic skills, how to qualify sources, how to work hard, how to organize my time. It taught me to be a self-learner, a lot of positive things like that. And I did get into some trouble in high school, and I think being separated from my friends, being forced to be in school on Saturday, it kept me insulated from some of the worst trouble. So all in all, I'm happy I did it, but it was definitely like a different path than a lot of my friends.
That's a fork in the road where life would be completely different.
Oh, 100%.
Like crazy different.
Yeah.
What was grandma's name?
Brigida. So we would call her Bridgie, was her nickname.
Unbelievable. What were the other students like at Taft? I mean, I'm guessing people are coming from big money, right?
Yeah,
international, maybe? Because this is 1999, right?
I was there in 95 to 99.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. There's what John, the 14-year-old, perceived, and then what John, the 43-year-old looking back, perceives.
Yep.
When I was there, we were given, I want to say it was only it's $10 million donation, and they built a building there. And the same guy gave like $100 million to Yale that year.
Yeah.
There were some Chinese nationals, like a lot of people international, but I really wasn't aware of it. Like some of the kids I was friends with, I found out after the fact, like, their parents were extremely wealthy. And then there were some local kids, and there were some families that did fairly well in, Fairfield County, Litchfield County that sent their kids there. But it was a wide mix, I would say.
Interesting. You enjoyed your time, though?
Yes and no. Like I said, it's a sacrifice, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's hard work. I'll give you an example. We would go to school Monday, and you had every single class Monday. And I remember I had another friend who went there, too. Her name was Tony Bronya, and we were tight in 7th and 8th grade. She was one of those friends I made in Watertown. And there were a couple other people, but she was my closest friend from Watertown that went there. And I can remember the first weekend on Sunday, I went to her house to do the homework for that Monday. I think we spent a solid like 8 hours getting the homework done. And it felt overwhelming at that point.
Oof.
Yeah, it was a very, and that was my first weekend at Taft. Like, that was the first experience.
Wake up call.
Big time. But by the time you get done with it, like, you learn, I don't even know how to explain it. Like, I had good time management, right?
Yeah.
So I figured it out by the end of senior year. And I remember going to college. I went to Boston College, which was fairly competitive. It's a good university.
Yep. Great school.
Yeah. And I had friends who really struggled in the beginning there, and I was like, oh, this is cake. And I didn't take shortcuts. Like, I went to college, every single reading assignment I did. Like,
Not Spark Notes.
No, not Spark. So it was, and we didn't have the internet, all the shortcuts nowadays. This is a little different.
Much different than my college years.
I didn't cut corners, and, you know, I was able to excel in college, and it's all really the skills that I learned at Taft, for sure.
That is awesome.
Yeah, academically, it was a great thing. So
growing up, did you play any sports? You played a few.
Yes and no. I mean, I did rec league sports, so I played basketball, soccer, baseball, and I did that every year from probably K through 6, and I was a little bit of a late bloomer physically, so I can remember moving up to the league in baseball in 7th grade, and I was so small, like I literally couldn't get the bat around and get a hit. Like, it was, I just fell right off. So I stopped playing basketball. I stopped playing baseball just because, honestly, like, I wasn't able to physically keep up. I grew when I was older.
At 34.
Literally, I think I hit puberty when I was in, like, my senior year. Like, I was 5'1", 105 pounds my freshman year at Taft.
Wow.
And I remember that because the wrestling team was trying to recruit me to get me, but I had to cut weight to like 95 pounds to wrestle in that division. They had a hole. I was like, I am not losing 10 pounds, right?
Yeah, you didn't have 10 pounds to lose.
No, I was 105 pounds as a freshman, right?
Yeah.
So I think junior year I grew from like whatever it was, 5'2" or 5'3" to like 5'8". I just grew late.
Yeah.
I hit puberty late.
Yeah.
So it is what it is, but it impacted sports. Basketball, I was skilled enough that I was decent to keep playing, and I was able to overcome the size difference. But
in growing up, was you, mom, dad, and you have a brother?
I have a brother. He's 2 years younger than
What's his
me.
first name?
Michael.
Mike, and he works with you in some investments and stuff, right?
Yes.
A little bit?
Yeah, for sure. So my brother, when I got out of BC, I actually moved to New York City and did several years away from home. And I didn't want to go into real estate, right? Like, my father, that was his thing. I was not interested.
Wait. We're going to pause here. I want to come back to this. We're not going to dive. I have so much I want to dive into about that.
Long story short, though, what I was trying to get at is my brother did military service.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
What? Where?
He was an Army reservist, but he got called up because that's when the Twin Towers got hit.
No way.
Yeah, so my brother's a veteran. He served overseas, and he came back, and he got into real estate with my father. And the agent journey wasn't for him.
Yeah.
He's my brother. You want to talk about, like we were talking about, being a libertarian, individual liberty and stuff. Like, my brother is a self-made guy, and he didn't even want to work for other people as a realtor. Like, he wanted to be an investor, flip houses, like, just totally be in his own business. So, you know, you're a real estate agent. You guys know you're in mortgage. Sure, you're your own business owner, but you're serving other people. Like,
100%.
That's how you have to. That's how you're earning. So my brother tacked more into the investment side, and we partnered on a bunch. You know, me and you talked about it, but basically we started from... We both saved up money, him from flipping and me from being an agent. We initially saved up $50,000 a piece, which was a lot of money, but it's not crazy money. It's doable if you save money, right?
100%.
And we bought a 3-family, saved all the rent, then bought another one with the down payment.
Snowballed it.
We snowballed, and we got up to about 30 units
I have
self-managed.
more on that I want to touch too.
Okay, that's for later. Too.
I got like
See,
five.
I got Gaetano's got his plan. I told him I shoot from the hips, so he's
John,
gonna have to reel me in a little bit.
I gave John a 5-page packet of what I had written down. He goes, I'm not looking at that. Then we just dove right into it.
Exactly.
What was it like growing up with Dad? He was a big personality, right?
Huge. My dad, he. That's funny. You glean that from our conversation. I love that. My dad was an alpha, right?
Yeah.
Like total alpha. Very, very, very powerful personality. Very competitive. Wants to win. Wants to be the best.
Yeah.
I looked up to him so much from like even a very, very young age. Like I remember my father even saying to me, like, John, you know, you don't have to do it for me. Like, you know, like he tried to he even realized how much I idolized him.
Yeah.
But yeah, I looked up to my father a lot.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
How did Mom and Dad meet? Newspaper ad?
They were no. Yeah, right. That's funny. Not the internet. They actually met at a bar in Torrington called Dial Tones. You want me to blow your guys' minds, right? Because you're young. You know what a rotary phone looks like?
Yeah.
It's got the
spin the thing.
Yeah. So this was a place in Torrington, and it's not a singles bar, but it was known. It was kind of there to facilitate meeting people. And there was a telephone at every table, and your number was above the table. So if you wanted to call another table, you thought whatever, you would just dial them up, and you could chat with people at other tables. So my father called my mother's table, and I think he started flirting with my mother. And my mother was with her best friend at that point, Nancy. I forget her maiden name. Forgive me, Nancy. But she was with her best friend, Nancy, and I think they went to the bathroom, and Nancy's like, oh, I think, you know, he's handsome. My mother said, oh, no. She's like, I like him. I'm good right there. And, you know, they ended up getting married. So,
No way.
Yeah, that's how they met.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. We're going to fast forward to BC.
Sure.
So you double major. What do you do there? Economics?
Yeah, economics and philosophy.
What was your time at BC like?
Super interesting.
Yeah.
Again, ironically, I don't think I really was a good fit. Like,
Why do you say that? Because I went to Jesuit high school and college, and BC was my number one choice.
I think I'm going to quote Ron Delaney here. He's a guy. He's also a mortgage broker.
Yeah.
But he says, my father was very street smart, which he was. Ron says, John, you are the most street smart and book smart combination I know. So I think the book smarts is from Taft, but I'm a street kid, like, in a sense.
Yeah.
Like, that's why I think maybe I didn't fit. Like, there aren't a lot of Waterbury, you know what I mean? Like, 100%. I wasn't just some smart kid from Middlebury that ended up at Taft. Like, I grew up in Waterbury and just mixing it up with regular kids, regular families. And, you know, I think I'm a unique mix. And in that
100%.
sense, when I went to BC, I feel like it was chock full of valedictorian and salutatorians of their local high school, and they didn't have life experience, you know?
Yeah.
And I had some street smarts, and I think I was just on a different, and I had gotten into some trouble too, you know? And these kids were pretty pristine, so I don't feel like, I was not coming from the same places. I'm not saying everyone.
The majority.
But a lot of the kids fit a certain mold, and I just was coming from a different mold.
That is so funny.
Yeah.
So you double major, but before we get into your thesis, which was similar to you know, statistics and Moneyball, you started practicing faith in college, right?
Yeah.
Right? Like you.
Yeah, it's funny because when you mention BC, I think my biggest takeaway, where I think at Taft it was the academic takeaway, and I continued that through BC. the biggest takeaway at BC was definitely a faith takeaway. It's a Jesuit university. We talked about, you went to Fairfield.
Prep
right?
and then Fordham. Yep.
Fordham. Okay.
Yeah.
So I didn't catch that. So you're on the Jesuit
Yeah.
trajectory, so you understand it as well. So basically my freshman year, you took a course. The core curriculum at BC, you need 2 philosophies and 2 theologies. That's part of it. There's more to the core curriculum. There's math and science and everything else. But there was a course that you could take your freshman year, and it was a hefty course. It was a 12-credit course, so it's a big commitment. Wow. And you get into classical philosophy and a lot of theology. So you read, you start with Plato's Republic, you touch on some biblical stuff, St. Thomas Aquinas, St. Augustine, and then you get into like Hobbes and John Locke and Nietzsche. I mean, there's a pretty wide gamut, a lot of exposure, but the core of it is philosophy, theology, Western, right? Obviously, it's not really Eastern philosophy or religion. I had that going on, and my roommate was an evangelical Christian from the Midwest. And, you know, it's your roommate. You're sleeping. You go to sleep every night. You're talking to him. And I started going to Bible studies with they call it a non-denominational group, but it wasn't Catholic. It was Christians, like evangelicals. And I ended up teaching some Bible studies and stuff. But long story short, I basically was in my dorm room reading scripture, like reading Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And I think it was Matthew maybe. And I just am reading about Jesus and things that he's saying or written and read. And even though I was brought up Catholic, like I was sitting there, I said, this is real. It just hit me. I was like, this really happened. And it was a turning point for me in a lot of ways. It changed my life. And that's the best way I know it sounds strange, like it wasn't necessarily intellectual. It became intellectual because I wanted to understand it more, but it was really just reading and saying, I think this is real. Like this is truth that's being spoken in the Bible. And I mean, it changed my life big time.
How did it change your life? What did it make you think or do different?
I mean, it's a gradual process.
Yeah.
But the way I look at it is, number one, I read the Bible. So I read the entire New Testament, most of the Old Testament. I got bogged down in some of it, and then I skipped around. So, like, I can remember getting to Kings and saying, like, I'm reading some of this. I was like, okay, like, I'm looking at the page for 7 minutes, and I don't remember what I read. So I kind of jumped around from there. But then I read a bunch of the Psalms and Proverbs and the Prophets in the Old Testament. So I covered a fair amount of it. And I believe that, again, being, I consider myself somewhat of an intellectual. I consider myself an academic. I think by far that was the most important stuff I ever read. And a person, Jordan Peterson, I found him much later, but I think the way he explains it resonates with me the most. If you think of the Bible, or you think of the corpus of Western civilization and all of the things we read as the internet, like all the connections, like web pages, by far the most referenced and the most connected book is the Bible. Right? There is, whether you believe it or not, there is a source truth in there that underpins the government, philosophy, government, the way we think, logic, everything. So it hit me on a deep, deep, deep intellectual level where I was like, I think it made me a wiser person. That's one aspect.
So that might be.
That was That was creepy. That's creepy. The other aspect that I think it hit me on was on a personal aspect, right? Like, obviously having a faith, there's a prayer life, and there's an intimate, like a special thing about Christianity is that there is an intimate relationship with God. There's a personal relationship. Like you are praying, you are receiving blessings. And I just feel like I've been transformed as an individual, and I've been blessed many times. And I would even call them miracles. Like, I think there are things in my life that have happened that are outside of normal probability, which would mean that there could be some divine intervention, which to me is a miracle. And I feel like I've personally experienced that. And I think that God has transformed me from the inside out as a better person, and it took a long time. It didn't happen like that. And but like, just an example, I don't drink alcohol. And when I say that, it doesn't mean I'm not a recovering alcoholic. so like when my wife had a beer the other night and I said, "Oh, that looks good," I took a sip of beer, right? Like, this is, but I haven't like been intoxicated. Like, I think in the past 6 years, one time I got a buzz, and my wife was like laughing at me. She was like, "You should have a beer and a half more often. You're funny." Like, right? But like, that was a transformation that I didn't even think was possible, because I drank alcohol since I was 14 years old. It was a big part of social life. I saw my parents do it. Like, everybody I know is so socially ingrained. So like, that's just one example where I feel like from the inside out, I was transformed. So on a lot of levels, it's not just that. Also, my wife and children, and like the blessing I feel inside of that, like certain things like that as well. So
that is awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Your thesis was interesting. You did a thesis where you won some money, like $5,000, right?
I did.
So when you graduate college or close to graduation, you have to do a thesis on what you've learned, pretty much, right? Is that what it encompasses?
So yes and no.
I clearly didn't write one. But.
So in my economics class, there's an honors track, or at least this is the way it was when I was at BC, is that there's an honors track for economics. And to get the honors designation for economics, I don't know if I was recommended or what, but I think I was recommended by a freshman professor. But basically, you're supposed to take a little bit more advanced mathematics. You have to take this class called econometrics, which was mind-bending. It was probably the hardest course I took in college. And you also did a thesis. So the thesis is, it's like writing a PhD paper, but it's way scaled down. You're an undergrad, and then you have an advisor that helps you do it. And so I wrote a thesis, and it was on revenue sharing and competitive balance in Major League Baseball. And it used basically like regression analysis, like statistical analysis, to try to come up with a framework to make baseball more competitively balanced. And this is, in the beginning of the ballooning of the huge salaries and things like that. And it was around the time of Moneyball. It was a different direction, but part of the reason I won the prize wasn't because it was so great and I was so brilliant. It was a good thesis, but part of it was because what I was dabbling in was becoming like a new frontier, like econ crashing into sports, that really was two distinct separate worlds. And if you watch Moneyball, that's kind of what they talk about. Like, they got Billy Beane, and they're like, "What are you talking about? Like, Joe over here has been, scouting for years." And Billy Beane is like, "No, you have to look at numbers. WAR. Like, now we even have new stats in sports that they track." So that's the tie-in. It's just that I did something that was, and I never pursued it. The truth was, I could have got it published, but I had to polish it up and this and that. And after I graduated, I didn't take the time to polish it up and get it published and all those other things. But it was interesting. And I did get a few bucks. I think I can't remember if it was $5,000 or $2,500, but I got a few bucks.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Something I don't necessarily agree with you on. You weren't a big fan of Boston.
Yeah.
Not to throw you on the spot, but
that could have something to do with the fact that as a freshman, New York Yankees beat the Red Sox, and my friends up there wouldn't talk to me.
No way.
No, I'm joking.
Oh,
that did
2001,
happen.
right? Or
99. I
oh
started
my
out.
God!
I mean, like it was. This is when the curse was still on the Sox, and it was brutal. No, I joke. That's not why.
Yeah.
To me, first of all, people don't know this. Boston is cold and windy in the winter.
Cold.
Okay? It's freezing cold.
You're not there during the summer, too. You're only there for school.
Oh.
Yeah.
And I traveled I did other stuff. I lived in Australia. I lived on the West Coast in Silicon Valley. Like, we didn't touch on everything, but look, Boston is cold and windy. Boston, as a young guy, it shuts down at 2 o'clock. Some of the bars are shut at 1.
Correct, yeah.
So there's that. And their public transportation system, sorry, Boston. Boston's a beautiful city. I shouldn't slam Boston. It just wasn't for me.
At 20 years old or 21 years old.
At 21 years old. And again, this was 22 years ago.
Yeah.
But the public transportation system where I was off of Boston College was the Green Line Metro. It was terrible. So, like, to get anywhere, to get into Boston was an hour. And then, like, if it wasn't on the Green Line, you had to switch. Like, it was bizarre. And I had been to New York City a few times, and I was just like, that's my city. The city that doesn't sleep, more action, be out till 4 or 5 a.m.
Yeah.
And New York City's transit is amazing. Like, you can get around that city easily. So that's all it was. It's not really a hate on Boston. And I do feel like, here's another thing, right? If I go on vacation, right, let's say I'm in Florida, people go, oh, where are you from? They don't ever say, you seem like you're from Boston. They all say, are you a New Yorker, right? They don't know what Connecticut is, but, so I think I have a little bit more just of a New York attitude and style. And I lived there for 4 years after college, and I loved New York City.
So that's what I was going to ask. You're starting in New York job-wise. What'd you do?
I was a high school teacher.
Before that, what'd you do? Was that job in New York?
Which one?
Cold calling or?
Oh, that was an internship.
Oh.
That was an internship.
You did a Silicon Valley internship, and then you did that one?
Yeah, so, okay. That was actually a really cool experience. I didn't dive into this with you too much, but when I was at BC, I wanted to try different things in the summer. Like, I didn't want to go back to Waterbury, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, this is, like, there's a bigger world out there. So one of my good friends was a recruiter for this thing called University of Dreams. It sounds cheesy, right?
No, it does.
But it really sounded like they needed to rebrand that one for sure. But what U of Dreams was, this was the tech right before the tech bubble, which you guys were so young. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly when it was. So the NASDAQ and the tech bubble popped. But prior to that, like, if you bought dog.com, you were like you had like $50 million. Like, it was just ridiculous, right? So it was the dawn of the internet. If you had any idea internet related, you got money behind it and you got wealthy, even if it made no money. It ended up crashing out and then coming back as the applications like actually made money, right? So what happened was I applied to University of Dreams in that time period when the crash happened. But the program that they offered was a Silicon Valley internship. You lived at University of Santa Clara in their housing over the summer, which I'm going to tell you, blue skies, guys. Like, I did not see a cloud for 2.5 months. Okay? Whoa. You're in dorms with all other college-age kids. I think you had to be a junior or senior in college, so they're all your age. Twice a week business seminars at night with guest speakers, and they got legit speakers. Like, I learned a lot in those seminars, and we used the facilities at University of Santa Clara, so there were speech rooms and stuff like that. So that was wicked cool. And then weekend excursions. We camped out at Yosemite, like at the top of the mountain. We hiked up, pitched tents, camped out. We went to vineyards in Napa Valley for 2 days.
So cool.
Like just the weekend excursions were off the charts
Yeah.
too. So it sounded like an amazing opportunity. So I ended up with an internship out there. I don't know how much you want me to talk about that.
No,
but
keep going. Why didn't you stay? Why didn't you go back?
to
Silicon Valley, West
so
Coast.
That's so funny that you mentioned that. Looking back now,
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, I really wish, because look at AI and just look at like what came out of Silicon Valley the past 20 years. Like all the Magnificent Seven, like all the big companies are from there. You want to know the truth? I can tell you why. It's because they think different. They think differently. And when I went out there as a 20 or 21-year-old, it was very foreign to me. And I don't, they had more of an alternative view that makes more sense to me now, but it just seemed very foreign. Like I could tell that a New York business mind and a West Coast business mind were completely different. Even the doctors, like I remembered going to a doctor out there, like I didn't feel well, and the doctor was like, oh yeah, the East Coast, there's all these contaminants and you've been exposed to heavy metal. I'm like, what the hell? Like I got a blood, like, you know, like I have a head cold. Like what is going on out here?
Heavy metals.
So, yeah, exactly. So, and nowadays, like the heavy metal thing, like that actually makes sense. Like you hear things like that now, but I just think the thought process and the way that people thought, it felt like I was almost in a slightly different country. It really did. And I didn't consider going back out there. I didn't have a tech background. That's another thing.
Yeah.
Like all of those people are software engineers, like their tech background. Like you might think of Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates. They became CEOs, but they were nerdy software engineers, right?
Yeah.
And then they learned how to manage people and grow a business. Like that's a total metamorphosis. So I just think I wasn't in computer science.
That is so funny.
Yeah, so that's part of it too. But I did feel like the mentality was different, like palpably different the way that those people thought, that I was exposed to at least.
Growing up in Waterbury. And,
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that's so
I didn't feel at home there. That's a better way of saying it.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a 180. You end up teaching in the hood in New York City.
Love it.
Right? So you were there for 4 years?
I was. So
Where'd you live in New York City?
Well, let me rewind how I got out there. So I remember being at BC and I just didn't know what I was going to do. So I considered law school. I considered business. I'd done the internship. I got a little sour on the business world. That's another thing. I won't get totally into it, but I didn't love what I did out in Silicon Valley. So I was like, maybe I'll try a different angle. And then don't forget the faith background, right?
Yeah.
So at that age, I'm thinking faith means service, not making money.
Yeah.
And it's hard. As you get older, you realize there's a lot more nuance to things. When you're young, you kind of make...
Black and white.
Yeah, it's black and white. The world's not as gray. So I was like, oh, okay, like maybe business not as good and like I'm going to serve. So I heard about this thing called Teach for America. And what it was is there was a teacher shortage in underprivileged, like basically inner city schools around the U.S.
Yeah.
And if you signed up, you had to go where they sent you. And I ended up finding out there was an equivalent in New York City, similar program called New York City Teaching Fellowship.
Yep.
And the deal was that I could move out to New York City, get a paid master's degree in education in the summers and at night, accelerated, and become a classroom teacher immediately. So I graduate college, take summer courses and night courses, and then in September, I'm a classroom teacher.
Wow.
And it was all paid for.
Yeah.
So, and it was in New York City, which is where I wanted to be.
Yep.
So I ended up doing that. And here's the craziest part. That New York City was so understaffed with math teachers at this point in time.
Yeah.
It was so understaffed, and part of it was because of the pay. I made $39,000 my first year there as a teacher. They were bargaining. It's collective bargaining. So the union was negotiating a better contract, and I actually got retro pay. But I remember when I started, it was 39 grand. So anyone with a math degree, you're nuts to make 39,000, right?
Yeah.
It's very, very hard to get by on that. So I remember they needed math teachers so badly that they took my econ degree and said, okay, you could go teach math, right?
Yeah.
And it just so happened I was good at mathematics. Like that's what I really excelled at in school. So I was good at calc and stat. Like I taught all high school math. I taught all different levels, and I was very comfortable with it. But it was funny because I didn't know what a lesson plan was, like nothing, and they throw me in the school. So another thing is the school I was in, it was not a good school. Like it was rough. I mean, it was very rough, but it was in an area of Brooklyn that was becoming heavily gentrified, and a lot of money was pouring in there. So they tried to break up the school from one big high school into 3 separate schools, 6 through 12. And they felt like it'd be more manageable that way. And I ended up teaching at one of the 6 through 12 schools. And 4 days in, the other math teacher quit. So 4 days in, I was the most senior math teacher in the high school department.
With no math degree.
With no math degree, and I don't even know what a lesson plan is, basically.
Unbelievable.
So it was pretty wild. We had metal detectors, and like I've broken up many fights physically with my hands, grabbing kids, shoving. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah.
This is 2003 to 7.
03 to 7.
Yeah.
Yeah. Matter of fact,
Good point.
when I broke up a fight, because I ended up teaching in Waterbury.
Yeah.
Afterwards, for a few years, I remember there was a fight in the calf, and I see it, and I just sprung into action, and I guess I jumped over a table, grabbed the kid, and like pulled him up, and the kids started calling me Spider-Man after that.
So funny.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
I got some good memories, but
That is crazy. So you finish teaching there, and you're done with New York City. You're like, I'm going to head back to Waterbury.
something like that.
Something along those lines.
Something along those lines.
You knew that teaching no longer was for you, though.
Yes and no. Yes and no.
Because you started coming back home, hanging out with family and friends, and you talked about, maybe law school was in the cards?
Yeah. So basically what happened is when I came back from New York City, I was reconnecting with a lot of high school friends, and I didn't have a game plan for work. So I went to continue teaching in Waterbury, similar in my mind, at least, to the school district I was in, again, serving the youth. And I got my real estate license part-time when I was in New York. I didn't practice, but I actually got licensed when I lived in New York. And it's reciprocal in Connecticut, so I switched it over. So I started selling real estate part-time for my father, but selling we should use lightly, because that first year I sold myself a 2-family and that was it. So the second year I think I sold one friend a place and that was it.
Yeah.
Like, it was really, and I studied, I took my LSATs, I applied to law schools, but concurrently with education, I already had my master's degree in ed. I had started my 6th year degree. So I literally, when I gave up education, I literally think I had 2 classes and a portfolio away from having a 6-year degree, which is an admin degree. It's like a double master's. And I just remember I had 7 years in ed, 3 in Waterbury, and I said, I'm vested at 10. I said, I'm all in or I'm all out. Yeah. And I just decided I was all out at that point. And I was going to go to law school. But
Go ahead.
The story. My father was the ultimate salesman, right?
Yeah.
So basically, here I am. I might misspeak a little. Let's say I was 27. I'm in there somewhere, maybe 28. My father says, he said, John, by the time you get out of law school, you're going to be in all this debt and you're going to be 31 years old. And, he basically I don't want to throw my dad under the bus. He said some funny stuff to me, just that being a lawyer is not all that glitters, right? And he said, what's the difference if you work for me for 1 year? If you don't like it, you're a year behind. You could be a broke 32-year-old instead of broke 31-year-old, basically. He said, if you like it, you like it. And I went to work for him, and I did. I liked it. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because he even admitted to me he never thought I would have the success I had as an agent. And it's, again, because if you're a good real estate agent, you need some street smarts, right? Yeah. You're dealing with people. You need to be sociable. And I think my father thought I was more book smart than people smart. But I did really well. I mean, my first year, I did well. And then I just said, you know what, this is for me. And part of the reason I loved real estate, a couple reasons. One is my father told me early on, because, again, being a Christian, conscience, all these things, he said, do the right thing for your client. If it's a bad house or you don't like the situation, tell them the truth. He said, at the end of the day, it's actually good for business because they're going to want to refer you more business and they're going to feel like you truly have their back, right? So I liked that my values were aligned with my clients. What I heard my father say was, if you do the right thing, you make more money and you grow your business and you're helping people. And I really, 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 early on in my career, took every single client under the wing. Like, I'm protecting them. I got to find them the right house, get them the best deal. And it is a big deal, right? It's the biggest financial decision of a person's life, usually. Not everybody, but your average human, it's the biggest purchase and sale that they make. And it made me feel good that I was, like, guiding them. And I like the idea of being a fiduciary, and that ties into the whole my whole philosophy and everything being about personal liberty, right? So a fiduciary means that I am using my knowledge and expertise to help you make the best decision for you. So it's not that I'm making the decision for you. It's that I'm using my knowledge and expertise to help you make that decision. And I really, because I believe in personal liberty and personal freedom, I liked that. And because I believe in helping people, that all kind of jived and intertwined for me at that point.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Well, you scaled up your personal production quite a bit before making a change into management.
I did. So it's like anything else, right? Like, I tell my agents, because now I'm a broker, I have 130 people that I help out and they work under me. Like, I explain to them, you're building something, it takes time. And I know if they're going to succeed or not right off of the rip. And how do I know? Well, because the people who come in and think it's easy, they're not going to make it. It is a grind. It's a highly rewarding business, but everybody wants to find a shortcut. It doesn't work like that. You have to grind in the beginning to get there. So
you said it.
I was a grinder. I was willing to put in the effort. I lost my train of thought.
I was going to say is about the work you're doing now. You're not going to be compensated for years down the road. There's no way to get instant reward.
Right, we talked about that. So, like,
And the second thing you said is, I don't know, Nancy A., she's a legacy agent. She doesn't even want the new business, but she has so much coming in because of the 20 to 30 years of work she did years ago. Yeah. It's all referral-based, and it takes time to develop that.
That's what I try to explain it. So if an agent is watching this, and mortgage is going to be the same thing.
Identical.
So I think for your audience, something that I would like to share is, like, if you watch what I do now as an agent, you would just think, oh, you just receive people's phone calls and then they want to list their house with
$1.5 million
right?
home. Yeah.
So my father's old partner, Nancy, she was an awesome agent for 40 years. So she's training some new agents and they watch her. You can't do what she's doing now because it just looks like the business falls out of the sky and she's servicing it. But what's really happening is those 40 years of hard work are paying off now. And what stinks is when you're year one in, you're working your butt off and you're getting not much. But that's because it's all getting paid to the future. It's future you. And I think that's why a lot of people don't make it, because it's hard for them to understand that they have to sacrifice for the future person and they don't see the reward in front of them and they give up. or they lose their motivation.
Like most things in life, delayed gratification is important.
Huge.
And people that don't have patience for it will not succeed. The people that stick with it will reap majority of the benefits.
You can fact check me on this,
Yeah.
but I have heard that there are indicators of success, right? IQ is a predictor of success. Higher IQ, you do tend to earn more. However, the number one indicator of success is ability to delay gratification. And there's actually a psychological study where I forget the exact
Cookies?
thing. I think it was marshmallows,
Yeah,
something
yeah,
like
okay.
that. They take a kid, they put a marshmallow in front of them. They say, I'm leaving the room. If you eat the marshmallow, fine. But if you don't, you get 2 when I come back. And the kids who are able to delay the gratification, they follow them 10, 20 years later. They do much better in life. And it's not even just financially. It's across many metrics. So I'm telling you that is 100% true in real estate because there is no instant gratification.
Spot on. What did you do to really get things rolling early on? Because your best years, you were doing how many?
I got up to about 100 transactions a year personally.
Unbelievable. So maybe 30 million or so a year.
It was so the prices were a lot lower. I think it was 26 million was the highest I got. Yeah.
Okay.
26. So it's actually not that far off.
Unbelievable.
Basically, I would like to share that trajectory with everybody. So I just put my head down and did everything. So in the beginning, if you called me and you wanted to see a $600 rental, I was showing it to you. I didn't say no to anyone, no boundaries, on the phone all night, doing everything, grinding like crazy. And I wanted to help everybody, right? Like I wasn't like, oh, you spending more money, so I'll help you, but I won't help you. Like it wasn't like that. It was just help everybody, be at everybody's service, do the best I can. I got to a point where I'm going to say I was doing 60 to 65 sales and another 20 rentals a year, and I had zero quality of life. Well, why? Because I had created no boundaries with my clients. I'm on the phone at 10:30 at night, problem solving or having intense conversations.
Yeah.
And sometimes it even bled over into personal, you know, like it wasn't as business transactional because I was so intimately entwined with my clients.
Yeah.
And there's pros and cons of that, but one of the cons is you're having these intense conversations all the time. You go half nutty. It's not like good for your well-being. So I'll share the story because I think, did I share with you about being at the diner?
Yep.
Yeah. I want to share that with the audience because, again, it shows you the blessings I've received from my wife, to be honest. So.
What's your wife's first name?
Lindsay.
Where'd you guys meet?
We got set up.
No way.
Yeah. We say we met at a pool party. Yeah.
Nice.
I'll tell that story.
Yeah, let's hear it. Yeah, before you get in the diner.
Okay. We have time for us?
Yeah. I mean, do you have time?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Man. So basically, growing up K through 6, I had my best friend was this kid, Ryan Vassar, towards 5th, 6th grade. Loved him. Great kid.
Yeah.
And long story short, when I moved back to Waterbury and started teaching, he was in my school as a teacher. That's why I taught there.
No way.
Yeah, I interviewed at a couple schools, and Ryan was there, and I was like, oh, this is cool. Like, I know somebody, he's a good buddy.
Yeah.
So we started hanging out a little bit, and I was out dating, and I remember he came to me one day, and he said, you ready to meet, like, a good girl? You know? I was like, yeah. And he's like, no, are you ready for a good girl? Like, you're going to settle. I was like, yeah, dude, like, that is what I am looking for. I don't know what I'm doing that it looks contrary to that. Like, clearly I'm doing something wrong, but that's ultimately what I want.
Yeah.
Right? I want a good girl, traditional values, someone I can trust, someone with the same values I could build a family with. Like, that's...
How many times can you ask me?
Right. I was like, clearly you think more highly of her than me, right? Like,
oh my God.
So they set it up. He's smooth, man. He really was. And I'll give a little credit to his wife because his wife was into it too. And I was friends with his wife. She's great. Her name's Angela. And Angela was cousins. They're not... When you're Italian, you have cousins that aren't really your cousins. Yep. So Angela's cousins with my wife. They grew up together. Their parents were very close. So long story short, we went to Ryan and Angela's house for a big pool party with like 25 people. And it was known that Lindsay and me are being set up. But if I look at her and I'm like, nah, or she's not my style, you just hang out. Like, it's not real low pressure. Real low pressure. They were smooth, I'm telling you. Oh. So we both kind of auditioned and we knew. And I was, I thought she was what I was looking for sure. And I won't speak for what she was thinking. But, we ended up getting married. So
2 kids, right?
Pretty cool. Yeah, 2 kids, 10 and 8, Leonardo and Lucia.
Unbelievable. That's my nana's name. Love that.
Yeah. And ultimately, Lindsay and I, again, shared faith values. Like, we have the same, not the same, nobody has exactly the same, but we have very similar beliefs, and the foundation was there. And that was my point about talking about the Bible is the foundation. Like, to me, that's the Christianity, Jesus. Like, that is the foundation. And my wife was in that same foundation. Well, that's how we built our family, right? On that foundation, you know? And knock on wood, I mean, we're extremely blessed, So,
that is awesome.
Yeah. So back to the diner, tie it all together. I'm sitting in the diner. I'm going to guess Leonardo.
Now, I got to pause you one more time.
Yeah.
Because at this point, you bought your first 2 family at 27. You and your brother were up to 25 units.
Could be, yeah.
Around there, right?
I don't know exactly the timeline on that.
And not only were you doing 60 sales at the time, or however many, but you were managing, leasing, doing all of the management for your properties you own too. Just to paint the full picture.
To paint the full picture, especially for agents who know me now.
Yeah.
Like, now they know I'm very good at delegating. Like, back then, those 65 transactions plus rentals, I was doing MLS data entry, all my paperwork. I was signing in person. Like, we literally, like, nonstop go, and I didn't delegate. Like, so, like, even though we have the support at Showcase and I have my agents using those systems, that's why I built those systems for them, because I'm like, don't be what I was. Like, it was not sustainable. So, but they should hustle the way I did in the beginning. They should hustle like that. But then they should lean on systems and efficiencies to grow their business, to help more people. But not only was I doing all of that on the real estate side, like to the point where I'm doing my own write-ups, putting the pictures in order, every little minute detail. On top of that, me and my brother were acquiring properties, and we self-managed. So my brother did a lot of the renovation. Like, a lot of times we'd buy a foreclosure. He'd do a full reno, which is a lot of work. So what's my end of the work? Well, I have to find the tenant, do the leases, rent collection, bookkeeping, year-end tax stuff. So it's full on, and deal with tenant complaints, phone calls. So it was full-on property management. So, yes, thank you for recognizing that. On top of all the sales, I was self-managing 25 units, which was intense. So didn't have much free time. And there were other, like, I was doing other things too, like that we didn't even get into, but there's other things in life, right, that come up. So I'm in a diner with Lindsay, and my son's young. I mean, he's like, I don't know, a few months old. Yeah, he's young. And it's a Sunday, and the whole point is we're going out for a family day. And I remember my phone is just like this, right next to me, like we all do, right? You're attached to your phone. And I go, oh, man, Linz, I am so sorry. This will be quick. I just got a text. And I know not to get wrapped up in it, so I get on the phone, I hammer it out, I'm not available, whatever. Well, now it's polluting my mind. Right? Because something did go haywire and I got to fix it. So all my problem solving gears are going and just my head's going. So now I'm not present with my wife, right?
Yeah, there but not present.
There but not present. Not even half present, because that's the other thing. As many strengths as I have, I cannot multitask, okay? So, like, I'm, like, in my own head solving problems. My wife is, like, I'm probably not even answering her questions. So she said to me, John, you're a great provider. You're a good man. You're a good husband. If you don't make a change, you're going to miss out on your kids' lives. And she was right. And she knew that my values were, like I said, God, families, right under there. Like, it's high value. And I made changes from there. And it took time, but I was able, the end result was about 2.5 years later, and I told Gaetano this, he loves this, but 2.5 years later, I went from 65 sales to 100. I was working, instead of 90 hours a week with my head spinning, I was working 25 hours a week. I was golfing every Friday. And I was just like, this is wonderful. Like, I got it figured out. I was making more money, and I got my handicap. I was down to a 7 that year. I was golfing
Unbelievable.
more. Yeah. And it's funny because I lived in that, like, I got it figured out mode for a solid year. And then my father goes, oh, you're buying out my partner Nancy, and here's how much it's going to be, and you're going to own half a showcase with me. I was like, whoa. Pump the brakes, buddy. Like, I don't know about all that. He's like, what do you mean you don't know? I'm like, I got it pretty good. You want me to you want me to reverse here and go into like crazy territory again, you know?
You had a great lifestyle at that point.
Oh, I'm telling you, that year it felt like such a burden, and I was setting boundaries. And again, this is something I want to teach agents. Like, don't get me wrong. There's pros and cons. Did I maybe not build as tighter relationships with my clients? Did I maybe not get as many referrals from them because of that? Yeah, like, there's some pros and cons. But I was able to set boundaries, and I was treated more as a professional by more of my clients. Like, some of the people who would disrespect me, I don't get disrespected anymore because it's more of a professional relationship, and they respect my boundaries. And a lot of those things that I thought I needed to do at 9 o'clock at night, I found out I didn't.
Oh, my God.
Like, it's not an emergency. So I tell my agents, real estate agents, there's one emergency, and that is submit your buyer's offer and get it signed. That is the only emergency. If you have a listing and you get an offer, it's no emergency to get that signed. I'm not saying you need to do it in a timely fashion, but if an offer comes in at 7 at night and you're with your family, you email it to your client and say, I'll call you in the morning. Review it before I call you, right? So it was a mindset change, and I was in a good spot.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
So Dad comes to you about buying into the business, and you were hesitant at first, but eventually, did he talk you into it, or not talk, but like, you know?
Some of it, yeah. I made the decision eyes wide open, but he thought he would just tell me that and it was done. Like, that's how it was even presented to me.
Yeah.
Like, this is how much it is, this and that. I was hesitant, number one, because my lifestyle was going to change. I had to refigure it out. Number two, I had to go into debt, right? Like, cost money to buy out a person out of business.
What year is this, by the way?
It's probably 6 or 7 years ago.
Dad
It's
doesn't have
almost 7.
cancer yet, does he?
Yeah, he did.
Did you know?
Yeah, and that was part of the motivation as well. So that factored, right?
Yep.
One of the factors of me choosing yes, and one of the big reasons I'm super grateful, is I wasn't 49, he was 51. I was 50-50 partners with my father in the business he built, and he handed it over to me and transitioned it together, and we were partners, and we were golf partners, and we were friends, and, you know, again, very blessed. That's why people say, I'm so sorry your father passed. Yeah, it hurts, but I was very blessed in my relationship with my father. So that ultimately is probably why I went in with and said, yeah, let's do it, and was excited. And I'm grateful to Nancy for it, and she knows I am. I've told her multiple times how grateful I am. And then the other thing is, it's different being a broker than an agent. So you're refreshing. You're doing something new. It's something new and exciting. It is hard. I would say being an agent's easier than being a broker, to be honest.
I believe it.
It is because being an agent, it's all on you. Like, being a broker, you got to manage people. It's hard.
All the problems roll up.
The biggest problems roll up. There's more people to deal with, right? So when I was an agent, you have to deal with the clients and everything. When you're a broker, there's a lot more moving pieces.
Yeah. You also took out a loan, right? So you did some things that was like, oh, this isn't just easy given to you.
No.
You had to earn it too. I mean,
again, like, I don't want to blow it out of proportion. I know people have built businesses from the ground up, so I had advantages, right? Like, even getting into real estate, like, I was built for the business in the sense of, like, you know, I saw my father do it. Like, I shadowed my father. I learned his scripts, what he said, how he handled people. And I think even growing up in his household, you know, like, I
benefited
up
from
in that mentality. Yeah. So I don't want to say like, oh, you know, I'm self-made, this and that, but it also wasn't just handed to me. And, you know, we talked about this. Like, I had some fears, like maybe if I bought Nancy out, maybe some agents would leave. I thought same thing when my father passed. I'm like, I don't know, maybe they're there for my dad. And knock on wood, you know, the agents stuck around. So I think they know that I've put my heart into the business and put a lot of effort in, and I have their back. So in those senses, yeah, I feel like I've earned it.
That's awesome.
But it also, I recognize what came before me. And same thing with Nancy. Like, she built, my father did not build that by himself. He needed Nancy. Nancy and him were the greatest yin and yang, and Nancy was more than nuts and bolts. And same thing, Madalena, we have someone that's been with us 26 years on the back end. You know, she grew the business with them. So it's a group effort.
100%. Always is.
Yep.
You have some great agents that are homegrown too.
Absolutely.
Which is an awesome testament to, it's not just people that started elsewhere. I mean, they started at Showcase and now are doing, you know, in a down market, 10+ million in sales or close to it.
Yeah. Several of our agents that we started have gotten over 10 million in sales, and I am super proud of that. And they're not 10 million in sales because they're buying leads. This is self-generated, sustainable business that no one can ever take away from them. I am proud of that. Because I think there are a lot of shops that the agents can't get that level of production unless they buy it, frankly. Like, you have to buy it through Zillow or something. So I'm proud of that. You know, we help them build a self-sustaining career.
You guys were top ranked in a couple towns this past year.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. For the first time, we were #1 in Middlebury, which felt great.
Your hometown now.
Yep. We kept, so it's funny because the 3 years prior, if you aggregated the 3 years, we were #1, but we never got #1. We were always #2. Someone different outdid us each year.
Yeah.
So that felt great. We were #1 in Middlebury this year. #1 in Waterbury by a wide margin. And that's
really?
Oh, yeah. I think, you know, by 20 or 30 million. And again, don't quote me.
Yeah, no.
Check, but by a wide, not even close to second. And we've been #1 in Waterbury at least since I've been there. And that's been 18 years. So it might be 20, 25 years. We never lost that crown. #1 in Thomaston this year.
Yep.
#1 in Oakville. Basically, the way I look at it is we sell statewide. We do a great job everywhere. We have the tools to list and buy in the entire state. But because we are from the greater Waterbury area out, you're going to do the most business there.
Yep.
So that's where we're the most relevant, and we have an extremely strong brand presence there. So a lot of people in greater Waterbury will say to me, oh, you own Showcase? Like, I had someone today, I had lunch. She goes, oh, you know, like, what do you do? Where are you from? I was dressed in a suit, and I'm at their bar, like, getting lunch. I said, well, I own a real estate company. Oh, what's it called? Showcase? Oh, which one do you own? And I'm like, well, all like, they think we're a franchise there. Do you know what I mean? Like, they don't realize it's a family business.
Wow.
You come to Monroe, not so much. Right? Like, but in our little niche area, we're pretty dominant.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. What do you do for fun?
What's fun? What's
Work?
fun? No. What is that? No, I snowboard. I do that with my family.
I was good. Do your kids, Lucia or Leonardo, snowboard?
Yeah, and my wife.
Oh, no way. Unbelievable.
We just went to Jay Peak 2 weeks ago. Dude, check. If you're an East Coast snowboarder, check out Jay. I mean, they had over 330 inches of snow this year.
That's wild.
Yeah, we were there. We got 24 inches like the 4 days we were there. So we were snowboarding powder. Jay Peak, it's northern Vermont. So it's
Canada,
near
pretty much.
It literally is like Canada.
Yeah.
That's how far it is. But we did that. We did Mount Snow this year. I love Mount Snow.
Yeah.
Real skiable terrain. It's easy. So I take my kid, you know, Leo goes top to bottom with me all day. And he's getting good, actually.
He's 10?
He's 10.
Okay.
For fun, I love golf. I would say, it's seasonal sport, but I absolutely love golf. I've made a lot of great connections on the golf course, and it's just great. It fits my personality. Like you get to be competitive and have fun, but you're also chilling with somebody in a golf cart for 5 hours, and there's something about that that's fun.
100%.
Yeah,
that is awesome.
Other things, I play video games. I know that sounds bizarre for a 43-year-old guy. But
when you told me that, I was dying laughing. Like, what? Hearthstone.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. I like Hearthstone right now. It's basically
I've never played it, but
it's a strategy card game.
Yeah.
And I always liked card games, right? So I like No Limit Hold'em. I loved Setback growing up. I've played Hearts, Spades, Whist. Pitch, well, that's Setback, same thing. But like, I like strategy things like that. Hearthstone, it looks really dorky, but it's really just a card game that's more dynamic because it's on a computer, so they can change the cards and they can change the rules of the game slightly. So I'm into it because when you're starting to get bored, they have a new season, they change the cards out, they even change the mechanics of the game itself. So it's fun. Yeah.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. So I play some. That's the only game I play now. I play ping pong with my kids. I mean, a lot of it's family stuff.
Yeah.
And then I read and
I was gonna ask that.
I podcast. I read a lot. I listen to a lot of podcasts or YouTube channels. I'm really into, I guess you would call it futurism. Like I've read a lot of stuff by Rick Kurzweil, Peter Diamandis.
Yep.
I love Bitcoin. Like I've learned a lot about Bitcoin, read several books.
You took a night class.
I took a night class in
Data science.
Data science. I was going to say machine learning, but that's wrong. I took a night class in data science, and it's funny because it ties in my thesis. I was telling you, like, I use regression analysis. Like that, linear regression is like the beginning of data science. Yeah. So I was building on some prior knowledge, but I've been out of it for 20 years. I couldn't believe the software tools they have. And ultimately, the reason I took the course was to understand what's going on with neural nets. A lot of you guys just see ChatGPT, like you hear that. There's some pretty wild stuff going on. I mean, mind-blowing. Like literally mind-blowing. And for those of you that aren't keen to it, you should check it out, because the way I think of it is we basically have found a way to grow intelligence. I mean, that's really the best way to think about it. And like, imagine electricity. Right? Like people wash their clothes before electricity, but when you have electricity, you can have an electric washing machine, an electric dryer. Yeah. You could have a refrigerator. Like before electricity, you wanted a refrigerator, you need ice. Yeah. And you get electricity, you could get a refrigerator. So it's kind of like that, except it's not electricity, it's intelligence. And what makes it even crazier is that all of our systems, the internet, a lot of us just sit at a computer or use a phone like we're using tech. The AI can plug right into that. The infrastructure is already built out. So no one knows where it's heading, but Elon Musk posted the other night on X, we are inside of the event horizon. And I've been saying that for about a year because I believe it. And do you know what the event horizon is? Okay, so there's this concept called the singularity in artificial intelligence, and it comes from the idea of a singularity in a black hole. So the reason a black hole is black is because the gravity is so strong that even light can't get out of it. Okay? That's why it's a black hole. Light can't even get out. It's a collapsed star. And there's this thing called an event horizon where the math equations tell you when you can't see past that because nothing gets out. And that's where, like, physics gets all messed up. Like, it's just a weird point in history. Yeah. So people that follow artificial intelligence, and I have as a hobby paid attention to it probably 8 to 10 years. Like, it's been a long time. And they use the word singularity to explain when there's a tech explosion that you can't get beyond. You can't predict the future. Well, it's just going to happen so fast that you can't even see what's going to happen, right? And I think we're in that right now. I really do. Yeah, it's
so
wild.
it's coming soon, is what he said.
He said we're in the event horizon, which, again, you have to extrapolate what that means. To me, that means AI is already superhuman in so many dimensions that we really don't know what tomorrow holds. Like, we're in the middle of that. You can't see the future. It's getting wild stuff.
Yeah.
And just so you guys know, Elon has Tesla and SpaceX and X, which is formerly Twitter. He also has XAI, which they put out a frontier model called Grok 3 the other day. So they're on par with OpenAI. They're close. They're close. So this guy's on the... He started PayPal also, with Peter Thiel and a couple other guys,
I use Grok on Twitter. It's great.
Yeah.
I don't use ChatGPT. I use Grok.
That's great.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. But that's a hobby of mine, is trying to stay up on it. And you want to talk about philosophy, like, it bends your mind, because what does it mean that machines are, like, I'm trying to wrap my head around it. It's really a hard concept.
What do you mean by that with philosophy?
Well, what is intelligence, right? Is it the soul? Is it your brain making calculations? Is it happening in physical space? Is what the machine is experiencing, is it similar to what we're experiencing? Does it have experiences? Does it have consciousness? Is that blasphemous? Like, these are big questions that are going to start coming up. I mean, this is real stuff.
Yeah.
And it's a very strange time to be alive. I think most people aren't thinking of it that way.
Oh my God. No, 95% or more of people probably. I'd go as far as like 97. Doesn't even cross their mind.
Yeah.
This was a blast.
I'm just a bystander at this point, But it's fascinating to pay attention to. So,
John, thank you.
Absolutely.
Great time.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah. Thank you, Shano.
Of course. That was
Cool.
fun.